Welcome back. Today I want to talk a little bit about training splits and why I do SBD days so often. Do I recommend them? Should everyone do them, etc. Long story short, no, I do not recommend them for everybody. And a training split is something that's constantly evolving depending on the needs of an athlete. It's very individual, and that's the circumstance with me. There were a lot of events that led up to having the current training split that I do have, and it's definitely not something that I would sit down and decide to write just because I like it or I want to torture an athlete or something like that. So for some context, last couple years, the few 3, 4, 5 years, I've been squatting 3 days a week, benching 4 days a week, and deadlifting 2 days a week. Typically, I would do a squat bench day, followed by a deadlift bench day, followed by an SBD day, followed by a squat bench day. Something along those lines. Real quick here, this is a high bar rep PR actually. 170 kilos for a set of 5 is 5 kilos more than last week, and I believe then a 5 kilo PR. I was pretty happy with this, although it was pretty hard. It's just got a little friendly competition going with one of my athletes who just recently did the same high bar set and reps and weight, but his was a lot easier than mine. So, like I said, the last couple of years, that's been my base training split, and it hasn't changed for quite a while. Over the summer 2023, I did deprioritize training a little bit, so I wanted to bump training down to 3 days a week. I was going to be going camping every weekend. I wanted to leave the weekends open and just make training a lot more adjustable and kind of deprioritize it. So how do we take 3 squat days, 4 bench days, 2 deadlift days, and push that into only 3 training days? So we ended up doing 3 SBD days. I would do like a volume SBD day, a heavy SBD day, and then a tertiary SBD day, which is RDLs as the quote-unquote deadlift. And I was missing that 4th bench day, and that was okay for the time being. And then when time came to prepare for a meet, that training split was going pretty well, and it grew on me, started to like it a lot more. And so we just decided to keep it the same, but add a 4th bench day again. So that's how you see in this video I have a volume SBD day, followed by a bench only day. And then later in the week I have a heavy SBD day, followed by a tertiary SBD day. That's kind of how it evolved over time. It wasn't just that I decided to do this. You get a lot of questions and kind of some shit from people at the gym that I'm crazy or I just like SBD days or whatever it may be, and it's not really the case. It's just something that evolves over time. None of my athletes have more than 1 SBD day. I'm opening to programming it, but it's gonna depend on the scenario, and most people it's just unnecessary and probably unhelpful. Bench here, you see my first set at 130 actually kind of sucked. Honestly, I was not really satisfied with that, so I did 130 again for single on bench. Back offs were okay, and deadlifts went pretty well. I was actually a little surprised with this, plus 5 kilos over last week for the 5 doubles. This here is the first set, and then this next one here is the last set. I think this one was probably the best one. And here are some really high rep belt squats. I ended up doing 2 sets of 20 with 4 plates per side. Typically on this day I'll do sets of 12 to 20 reps on belt squat, and then on my heavy SBD day on Thursday I will do sets of 8 or 10 on this exercise. But yeah, so the training split, it's very much like programming as a whole. It's always going to be evolving, it's always going to be changing, and you don't want to be so dogmatic that you're stuck in just one way of thinking. Especially as a coach, you want to be open to all ideas and all scenarios and kind of think of what's good, better, best for this athlete in this scenario. And a lot of times there isn't going to be a single right answer. You might make the wrong decision, you might make the right decision. Maybe you realize you could have done something better later on. Maybe you go back and change it, maybe you don't. But the key is just kind of being open to analyzing a lot of different possible solutions to whatever the problem is, and not being so married to one specific way of thinking or one specific style of training that you just end up in the long term maybe harming the athlete or harming yourself if you are self-programming. This is actually all one set. You see there's 2 job sets in this lat pull down exercise, and this is the last set. I did a set of 12, a set of 10. This is a set of, and then a set of 8, and then a set of 6, followed by the 2 drop sets here. Got a pretty fat pump, and honestly I didn't really feel like I didn't have the strength. It just felt like my lats were too pumped to do another rep. This is day 2. Got 4 sets of 6 close grip bench. I actually did this day late. Usually this would be on Tuesday, but Tuesday ended up getting pretty busy and just didn't quite make it to the gym. So this is Wednesday, and I had some errands to run after this as well, so I didn't really dress for the gym. Wearing my regular pants. I'm actually wearing shoes. But it's all good. You can bench in whatever clothes. It doesn't really make too much of a difference. So yeah, I believe this is a close grip rep PR and volume PR as well. Those aren't a huge deal, but those little wins over time do stack up. So I did 4 sets of 6, all over 100 kilos, and then for my last set I did 105. I'm pretty sure I haven't done 105 for 6 close grip before. So how big of a PR that is, I don't really know. But rest of these accessories are the same thing that you saw me do last week. We have some dips, some chest supported rows, some double overhead press, lateral raises, base pulls, and bicep curls. Nothing too big of a progression from last week. Everything is mostly the same weight and either a couple more reps or a couple more pounds. Just some very small progressions. But the big thing that I want to talk about here is tempo and range of motion on accessory exercises. See, on most of these exercises, I'm doing a controlled, sometimes very slow eccentric, sometimes a pause at the bottom and a pause at the top, at least one or the other, and trying to have the longest range of motion possible. And even on something like a nimble overhead press here, you see a lot of people stop where their elbows are in line with their shoulders, and you're losing out on the most beneficial range of motion of the exercise. So the biggest stretch is really what you want to aim for, as well as a good contraction, but a stretch is even more beneficial for muscle growth. That's where most of the current hypertrophy science is aiming right now, is that total volume seems to be the biggest driver of hypertrophy, but if you can bias the eccentric and the deep stretch, then that's definitely a good thing. And I do a bit of a demonstration when I do curls, how most people will do curls, and it's just extremely ineffective. And so here's what I was talking about. Most people would do curls like this. not really going most of the way down, essentially half repping it, going very fast, and just throwing it around, compared to full extension, locking the elbows every rep, controlling the descent, having a pause at the top and a pause at the bottom. And you have to lower the weight quite a lot for this. Again, if your goal is to build muscle, which is the goal for most of these accessory exercises, then the weight that you're lifting is irrelevant and is purely a way to track progress. But whether you progress from 20 pounds to 40 pounds or from 80 pounds to 100 pounds, it really does not make any difference. So if your bicep curls take a hit and you lower them by 10 pounds, it's not that big of a deal at all.